YouTube, welcome back to Overlord House Gaming. In today's video, I'll be covering and showcasing a heavy weapons support build you can use while you either play as a duo or in a group while playing Dune Awakening. While this build can be used solo, I'd recommend checking out my other builds on my channel for ones that actually would fit that playstyle a little bit better. But anyways, let's get right into it. Alright, so let's dig right into the weapons themselves that we're going to be using today, guys. The first one's going to be the plasma cannon. This one's my personal favorite of one of the heavy guns we can use. I like to use this gun when we can, but the nerf on it unfortunately made it not as viable in the current meta. But regardless, we're going to go through today how we can make it at least somewhat viable in the labs. So we're going to have 3 augments on it once you have this thing maxed out and you have the ability to craft it. We have the Gao expander, we have the Vulcan disruptive coating, and we have heavy caliber. So this is going to give us a pretty good damage profile, as you can see. It's a, like I said, respectable weapon on paper, but because of the energy gun nerfs to bosses, the actual damage we're going to do with this gun is going to be a little bit less than what we see on the screen right now. So just keep that in mind for later in the video. Moving on, we have the Black Market K28 las gun. This thing also has 3 augments on it. Now, the first one we're going to have, it's always a no-brainer, but you want to have the heavy caliber upgrade on it. It gives you no downsides with a straight damage increase. We're going to have the las gun focuser. Now, optionally, if you want to have one that you don't have to rely on source of power, which I'll show later in the video, you can have on las gun harmonizer, which is going to lower the power consumption of the gun and also increase its rate of fire. It's going to give you somewhat comparable DPS, but a little bit less bursty. So it just depends on your playstyle for that. Now, the third one, it's going to be the other best in slot. Is going to be the las gun amplifier. This one has practically no downsides to using outside of being another flat damage increase. So those are going to be our main weapons we're going to go over today. Let's also dive into the Hateful Barker. All right, so let's talk about this gun for a little bit. Basically, the Hateful Barker has a pretty low damage profile, despite what it has on paper. I put on disruptive coating, heavy caliber, and the accelerator to try to boost its accuracy and recoil, but even with these modifications for the recoil and accuracy, it's going to suffer and be really inaccurate against most targets, even with a tractor field after about 10 meters. Once you get about 70 shots off with this gun, it's just going to be a crapshoot when you're trying to shoot a target. So I would recommend skipping on the Hateful Barker. Bashar's command is decent, but like I mentioned before, it suffers the same fate as far as damage and DPS. It's going to be just too low of a profile to actually be viable. But, you know, could it in the future get a buff? I hope so, just like all heavy guns. So only time will tell. But anyways, let's dive into the skills and techniques and stuff that we're going to be using with this build so you guys can get an understanding of how it works. Alright, let's dive right into the skills and everything we need here. So, one that I would consider mandatory if you're running support and you want to do the most DPS for the boss with these heavy guns is going to be getting energy capsule. You're going to want to be putting points into a passive over here for heavy weapon damage, center of mass, field maintenance. All this is going to be well and good. Suspensor dashes is good for lockout rooms, and if you want to do a death from above build with your heavy gun, be my guest, you're going to get a little bit extra DPS, but it is going to be a little more challenging to stay in the air, especially if you have the plasma cannon, where you're going to be consuming energy. So you can do that if you want to, though, if that's a playstyle that you enjoy. It's definitely viable. It's just the accuracy is going to suffer a little bit. Optionally, you can do reflexive reload with a tractor field and explosive grenade. You can just stick to a tractor field if you're using the plasma cannon, but if you're using Bashar's command, if you're using Hateful Barker, this could be pretty helpful of a combo, so you don't have to reload as often. It could be taking quite a while to reload, so battle hardened, we would slap that on for boss fights as well if you're using a tractor field. But let's get over to the other trees real quick before we touch on that. We have Garment Keeper, range damage. We're putting points into Assassin Shot. Since we're running support, we're going to try and get behind the boss the entire time and shoot them in the back for the extra damage bonus. We're going to want to put points into Source of Power and Decoy. Now, we can use Decoy if we are running solo, but if you're running with a duo, all you need really is Source of Power. And this is going to be for our las gun or the plasma cannon if you do not have it properly kitted. If you have the Vulcan expander, Like I mentioned before, for the plasma cannon, it's going to lower the energy cost of the weapon to a point where if you have circuit gauntlets on and conservation of energy from the planetologist tree, you'll actually be able to shoot this thing infinitely. So you won't actually have a need to use source of power with the plasma cannon. And getting over here to planetologist, as you can see, we got our usual setup along with conservation of energy. And then going on to Bene Gesserit, since we're running hybrid with the melee to clear the lockout rooms, we're going to have manipulate instability, weirding step, compel, our usual setup to clear the lockout room, guys. And then moving on to the Swordmaster, we have points into blade damage, long blade damage. If you're running short blade, like a dagger or dual blades for clearing up the lockout rooms, put points into there instead. We have knee charge, we have the general conditioning, the usual. But let's dive into the techniques and abilities we're going to be using in different circumstances. All right, let's touch on abilities. I'm going to try and keep this brief. So, as I mentioned before, attractor field is going to be a must for most situations. You can use this with a lasgun, as I mentioned. It no longer blocks it. And then we also have compel. Compel, you can use this if your teammate already has compel. You can take that off your bar and put on energy capsule instead. You can also use source of power if you're using a lasgun and you want continuous upkeep, for the actual energy source. But this is going to be your typical setup. If you want to play it a little more conservatively and you're using a lasgun, have compel on your bar, you can swap it around if you want. There's a couple different combinations. And then just so everybody's clear on what we do for the lockout rooms, we're going to be running either knee charge or cripple strike. We're going to be running weirding step, and we're going to have compel. And as far as our techniques go, we are going to have manipulate instability, center of mass, and conservation of energy. For the lockout rooms, you could do suspensor dash. Optionally, if you feel like you have good control over your energy consumption for the plasma cannon and the lasgun, you can run battle hardened and have higher uptime for attractor field. So that's an option as well. So you have a little bit of room to play here. But anyways, let's return back over to the armor we're going to be using. So this is going to vary per dungeon, just as an FYI. But the typical setup that you want for if you're going to do the fire lab is what you want: a full set of forge with double fire resistance. You can put on circuit gauntlets with fire resistance. It's not going to save you from one-shotting or getting one shot by the boss and their fire dot in one cycle. I would just say that as a caveat. You typically want the full set of forge if you want full survivability. I'm going to repeat that. You want the full set of forge of all fire resistance on level 40 in order to survive the fire dots. Unless you have a couple other cheeses that you can use, like if you have a switch where you can switch onto a weapon and put on reckless lunge. That's an option. I went over this in my melee video. I know you can survive using that way, but otherwise, that's going to be the way to do it, is to put on a full set of forge. If you're not running the fire lab, you need to put on heavy armor, for example, for the lightning lab. You can put on a full set of bulwark and put on circuit gauntlets that have dart mitigation. You can do forge with all blade resistance as well, and also blade resistance on the circuit gauntlets to survive the knee charge for poison. Same for darkness. For old quarry, I'd run either a full set of bulwark, and you can put on double dart mitigation and survive the drill shots if you get hit by the drill shot. So there's a lot of ways you can mitigate the damage here, even at high levels, guys. It's just going to be a little bit harder, obviously, with this build because your shield's down a lot, and if your partner is tanking the aggro, it can make it viable. So, but that's all I have for the armor and the gear, guys. Let's get right into a little bit of footage of using the weapons themselves, and I'm going to be providing some commentary on what it does well, what it doesn't, and whatnot. Alright, so starting off, let's get into positioning when you're running a heavy weapon build with a partner. You're going to notice that I'm going to try and position myself away from the aggro of the boss. It's not always going to be possible, especially if the boss is chasing your partner and you get eye contact with the boss. He's going to sometimes peel over to you if you get too close. When you can, try to maximize your distance, but also try to get your attractive fields off, try to pop energy capsule. It's one of those builds where it's a little bit clunky, and it's a downside of heavy weapons in the game so far. Even if you have the perk that increases your mobility, it's not going to matter too much as far as how stiff and clunky these weapons are, so just keep that in mind. Attractor field's going to go a long way, as you can see. Even when I shoot the boss with the plasma cannon stationary, the spread is pretty significant, so you're going to want to put tractor field on when you can. And if you don't have that on, or if it's on cooldown, try to get a little bit closer to the boss. And if you have a friend who's running melee or a shotgun, try to capitalize on those stagger bonus moments. You're going to notice where the boss gets depleted, and if you have manipulate and stability on, you're going to get more damage. When it comes to the lasgun, as you can see on screen, we're going to be running Source of Power here, and it's going to keep our uptime with the lasgun a little bit higher. Since the recent buff to the lasgun, as far as a tractor field, you can actually run a tractor field with the lasgun now. It doesn't make in-game lore sense, but hey, it's you know, it works. So, and if you are using the lasgun, you can actually kind of position yourself a little further away than you are with the plasma cannon. So, I tried to position myself away when I could for the poison boss. You can do the same thing for darkness. It follows a similar format. And then if you're going to be running fire, which you're going to be seeing in just a moment, you can stay pretty far away for the lasgun, and for the plasma cannon, I would stay within at least a quarter, you know, part of the map. So where we are right now, if a tractor field's on, you can get all your shots off, but if it's not on there, it's a little bit harder to get that full spread in there, as you can see. So just keep that in mind. For the fire boss, we have a much bigger arena than the poison without as many obstacles, so it gives us a little bit more space to actually use our weapon and just unload. It doesn't do a absolute ton of damage compared to our other peers like the perforator or the triple shot, but is it fun to use? I'd give it a 8 out of 10 for fun, and then a 5 out of 10 for actual damage. So, as you can see, my final thoughts are it's a little lackluster, but should you guys be using heavy guns if you enjoy it, go for it. I hope you have, you know, a ton of fun using it, and I think that you can get some good value out of it, especially with the plasma cannon. The lasgun also can have its fun, especially if you have a partner like I do right now that can keep aggro on the boss. So I wish you guys all well out there on your Dune journeys, and I hope you enjoy using heavy weapons. I'd love to hear in the comments below what weapon showcase or guide you want to see next in one of my videos. And don't forget to drop a like and subscribe, and see you all next time. Peace.